Hi, I'm Joe Quirk. Welcome to the Blue Frontiers podcast about all my favorite things: seasteading, the environment, special economic zones, and innovation in science, technology, governance, and society itself.
Hello, sisters. I have the very big pleasure of talking to Oleksii Konasevych, whom I met in the Danube in a boat in the 30th anniversary of Liberland. How are you, Oleksii?
Thanks, great. So pleasure to see you and to talk to sisters.
Such a big pleasure for us to have you here. So Oleksii is a PhD candidate at the University of Bologna, but you have a very cool PhD program. It's in law, science, and technology, right?
Right, yeah.
So cool.
So this is a consortium of universities. The University of Bologna is my headquarters, and now I am in Tilburg at the University of Tilburg. Well, actually not now. Now I'm at home.
Oh, cool. One of the advantages of PhD is that they can move around.
Yeah, that's great. This is it's called mobility plan. So yeah, I go to other university to see more, to know more.
It's
Great.
definitely fun. So we're gonna talk about the subject of your PhD, but also about your involvement in Propi, the real estate on the blockchain platform, and also about your contributions to e-governance in Ukraine. So why don't we start by you telling us what has been your involvement in the referendum, in the blockchain-based referendum in Ukraine?
Well, actually, it's not a referendum. I was engaged in the group which introduced reforms in Ukraine on electronic democracy. Well, referendum is one of the general idea of electronic democracy. Well, first we started with this known instrument of electronic democracy as electronic petitions.
Yes.
And I was the part of the team that wrote the bill in Ukraine to introduce these petitions in Ukraine. So basically now in Ukraine we have this law, and people are able to communicate with the government, with the president, with the parliament, with cabinet ministers, and with local governments in the form of electronic petitions. And that was the beginning. Yeah.
Okay, but I've heard you said that e-governance is not really enough to truly transform decision making, and that if we want to truly improve it and decentralize it and create real bottom-up systems, we need to move to the blockchain. Can you expand in that idea, please?
Yeah, right. So the thing is that we can design any kind of relations like we want to have. Like, just imagine we have a group of people and we decided that we interact peer-to-peer, we have democracy in our group, and it's okay. But just think of it. In the moment we want to digitize our relations, for example, we want to vote by using smartphones, whatever apps, and so on. In this moment, we decided to create our digital virtual reality of our interaction. And we have to use our traditional electronic systems, server-based, central server-based.
Yeah.
And it means that while our logic is being decentralized, all infrastructure is centralized, and only one keeps that control over this system. It's not good. So the blockchain is a way, not only like in logic, in our mind to decentralize, but truly decentralized relations based on the technology. So we don't need to trust anyone. We just need to trust mathematics and the community that holds this network. I mean, of course, we have to trust in general nodes and people, but this trust is based on the consensus, on mathematical consensus. So,
Yes.
The example of Bitcoin is a great example how it works.
Yeah, what you said reminds me of the equal marriage law in Finland, where around 30,000 individuals crafted a law on a Google Docs, and by so many people contributed, and there was a very good team of core lawyers and equal marriage law, right, activists that were really engaged with it. So anyway, by the end of this process, of these months, the Google Doc was so well written that the Congress had no other option but simply to pass it. However, it is kind of paradoxical what you've just said. The process was very kind of decentralized. I mean, you can argue, yeah, but who wants Google and all that? That's a separate discussion. Yeah. And then it had to go through the traditional chambers of decision making. So
yeah. I really like the system actually of Finland. This is a great example how to introduce electronic democracy. Just because, the difference of their system is that when people create electronic petition, the parliament is obliged to treat it as a draft law, which is a bit different in other countries. Well, mainly we couldn't make it in Ukraine. This is my really regret, because we want people to have this power of creating laws, or at least draft laws. Now it's not, but this is, let's say, the first step. I believe that many countries can also make this. I mean, not only to make a draft law, but think of a referendum. So when people create their, let's say, national law, and on the basis of national consensus, they adopt that law instead of parliament.
Yeah, that would be great. What other, what can blockchain governance provide that e-governance can't? In line with this decentralization, what specific tools, maybe identity registration, or what sort of things can we do on the blockchain that we cannot do simply on the internet?
Well, there are actually a lot of benefits of having blockchain on board. I would focus on the idea of creating infrastructure. It's a brilliant idea. Just think of it. Governments spend millions to maintain infrastructure of electronic governance of this system, but for example, for Bitcoin, nobody actually in charge of that. This is completely decentralized. We create the whole infrastructure. Nobody cares exactly to maintain this infrastructure. And for that reason, this is not corrupted. This is not centralized. It's completely works. Yeah. Like people are incentivized to take their machines and add to the network, install the networks works, and without anyone's will. So this is a great idea. And then when we have this infrastructure, we can build on top of that our decentralized system. And what I don't like about government right now, centralized systems, is that they are not transparent. If they even want to make some kind of public registry, it is still centralized. Well, even if it's open, if you can go online, you're not sure if this information is correct, if it's kept correct, if it's controlled by the government correctly, if it's not corrupted. It's not a good idea. So I always have to trust the government. I always to trust. And in case of the blockchain, I don't need to trust exactly one person. That information goes to the blockchain. It's stored permanently. I definitely know that nobody is able to alter or delete this information, and that's great. So when we talk about this, just my ideas on open data and other things, we can call it not open data. We can call it raw data, because it is transferred exactly in that form which is created. But when the government collects any kind of information in public registry, they somehow process this data, and then when they call it open data. But I don't know how this data was processed by the government. That's the problem.
One of my PhD colleagues here at Warwick, he's working on the illusion of transparency in open data of the government of France. So, you know, there's these algorithms to determine who gets housing, what income do you need to have or no income, if you have children or not. And then there's this secret algorithm. However, the government is obliged, now there's a bill where the government is obliged to publicly disclose all the information, but how they do it is very different. Let's say it happens also with companies like Facebook, Twitter, when they want to show that they are transparent. The format in which they upload it, it's like you just said, it's raw data. Okay, here's the CVS file. The data is just not analyzed. You don't know anything that we are keeping for us. It's simply what we decide to disclose. So there is still this illusion of transparency, even when governments are, as you are trying to show the theater of transparency, you know? Online means the theater.
I don't know this researcher, but this is a very, very interesting idea. Illusion of transparency, right?
It's an illusion.
Yeah.
It's definitely an illusion. I mean, unless the algorithm is fully disclosed, unless it's actually open, you don't really know what's going on there. And this reminds me of something that I heard you saying also, that e-governance reaches some limits when, let's say, you are going to, I don't know, register a company. So you register your company online and then you go home and eat whatever. But then on the other side of the government, there is someone who takes that information and puts it in a manual, like inputs it manually.
It's actually ridiculous. I mean that so many people talking about electronic governance that it makes governing more effective.
No.
But really, how it's possible? I mean that first we had this paper-based bureaucracy. When you go to the office, you communicate with the clerk, you have all these papers, you wait for a long time while well, just being processed by someone, and then finally you got what you want. I mean, a company, for example, at registration. Now they say, okay, the governance is more effective, but still this is the same. We use an electronic system just to transfer information from the citizen to the clerk, who is in charge of keeping that information and processing information. Why should we have someone there sitting in the office? I mean, this information, this process can be completely automated.
Yes.
I can file a company just in a couple of clicks and add all required information. Well, I've heard some people saying, okay, these clerks are checking some kind of information like your identity or I don't know. But for example, in Europe, there is a great system which is called EIDS, which is a system of digital signatures. So when I have my digital signature, a token, I plug in, and the system definitely knows that I am the one who is, I know my person. So I can do any kind of actions online, and they're gonna be legal binding. So I don't understand why someone has to be over there sitting and manually processing all information. For example, they want to know if my company really exists and is this the correct address. It's not a big deal to check. There is no reason to keep a person in the office to check all addresses of companies manually. That's just a cross-check or cross databases. So I mean that it completely can be automated, and there is no reason to keep all this huge infrastructure and spend money of taxpayers on public administration. So this is kind of my research work. I'm working on how to address all these issues. We can keep any kind of e-governance. I mean, any activity of public administration in registration companies, in registration real estate, whatever, any kind of properties, and it can be completely automated, or at least automated to higher level, at least as now. And so people will be able to get rid of bureaucracy, get rid of all this transactional cost. I mean, for business, it's a matter of being effective and competitive. Well, just think of it. We have business, for example, if there is some kind of technology emerging, business are trying to be competitive. They take new technologies, they adopt, they implement to their business and became more competitive. But look at the government. There are so many new technologies and governments are not incentivized to be more effective. I mean, they're so conservative, and I don't see really much efforts on using the blockchain technologies. On all those announcements that one government decided to use the blockchain, another government decided to use the blockchain, it's really fake, because when you go deep and try to understand what they're going to use, it's ridiculous. It's completely far-fetched. I have seen a lot of examples how it works. Even if we can talk about not blockchain as a technology, but cryptocurrency, you just look at this situation in Venezuela with Pedro coins. They are centralized. It's not a cryptocurrency. So how we can talk about the blockchain and cryptocurrency and decentralization if really it's not here in the place? Yeah,
So
that's
this
the problem.
is the same point that I know that you say this thing, and I agree with you here. Permissionless blockchains are the real blockchains.
Right.
Those that ask for permissions aren't blockchain. Why?
Completely agree. So you just can take Satoshi's white paper and read what he called the blockchain. The blockchain is the system which is designed and implemented first in the form of Bitcoin, right? So whatever it is, if it's not like this, I mean, I can argue and I can discuss if it's a proof of work or proof of stake and other ways of consensus, but public consensus.
Yeah.
But if it's controlled by someone, I mean, centralized, it's not a blockchain. You cannot call. Okay, there is another term. It's better to call distributed ledger technologies. Probably it's the best way to distinguish the blockchain and some other things, some other technologies. I don't say that they are bad, but I think it's very crucial to communicate with people and correctly use these words, because when you say, okay, the government gonna use the blockchain, and then when you see that it's not the blockchain, it's permissioned system, distributed ledger technology, and it is controlled by someone, how we can call that government decided to use the centralized system? It's just fake.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so true. Going deeper into your PhD research, how can we use blockchain technologies to remove the bureaucracies that exist, for example, in registering properties or titles?
Well, this is kind of complex question, because, well, actually that's because I'm doing my research. It's not easy to use this for registries on the state level. Well, some people think that it's not big deal. We just can use the blockchain as it is and use it for any kind of properties like real estate, boats, cars, and whatever. Well, in each country we have specially designed registries for their purposes. For example, it's called cadastral registry or real estate registry. The thing is that for a lifetime relations, it's not good idea just to use the blockchain as it is right now, when the concept of tokens and others, it's just the problem is that we have to find this, the borderline where we accept risks or not accept risks. For example, if we want to use a token to represent a title right for real estate, for a house, for example, if you have your house, you have a token. But in case you lost your private key, what's gonna be then? Yes. Or the owner dies and nobody has the access to this system, and so you lost your house, you lost your property. It's not a good idea for lifetime relations. So we need to create some kind of preventing system, and this is very contradictory because we say, okay, the real advantage of the blockchain that nobody has access to your property, to your private, to your address, while you keep your private key, nobody can have access. And on the other hand, if you share this access with someone, it's not now a trustless system. You need to trust someone. So I trying to draw this line, but on the one hand, not to create this huge bureaucracy like now we have, the government that keeps this registry safe. And on the other hand, I don't want to mimic this system and to transfer it and digitize in the form of the blockchain application, whatever. So I decided and came up with the idea that still we need someone to have access and to trust someone. But this someone must be controlled by the publicity, by people, by electronic, let's say, smart laws, which are adopted in a democratic way by electronic voting on the blockchain, of course. And so people will be able to control those trusted parties. We need someone to trust. For example, we need to trust a notary that will proceed inheritance issues when the owner dies. So his kids will be able to inherit this token. So this is a trusted party, the notary. But still, I don't want to trust the centralized system that manage this public notary system in the country. I want to trust system that is publicly controlled by electronic laws, let's say electronic smart systems, which are controlled by voting of people. It's a bit complicated, probably it's not clear for you, sorry. If you want to research this, investigate these ideas, I can show, you can find my slides with all these, diagrams that explains a bit clearly. But the main idea is that first of all, we need to create this layer of electronic democracy, of electronic voting on the blockchain. So when people and someone whom we delegate this right, for example, not really necessary to always to any issue to vote. We can create some certain things where people make their decisions directly, or they delegate this right to someone on some issues that they're not really sensitive, for example. And so this way we can have this, governing system, which is digitized completely. So when we vote, we not like now when people go to this voting point, and after this voting, someone implement this decision. I mean, we have still all these papers, all these things, but this is another thing. We just vote, and this piece of code is implemented in the system automatically in the result of our voting. So we don't need to trust, even in this case, someone who is in charge of implementing this system. Of course, it demands people to understand the code we are voting for. It's not easy. I completely agree, because not really much people understand programming languages, but still we have public expert. We can have public expertise. We can trust experts. We can trust people who really understand what's going on, so they can explain which system we are trying to implement. And so in this way, other people, I mean, who are not really good in programming can understand what's going on.
Wow, I have one follow-up question and one comment. So the question, I'll say it so that you don't forget it in case I do, is, are you talking, when you say third party, a trusted third party, you mean a company or an oracle? And my follow-up comment, before I forget it, although I think I already did. Okay, yes. So what you just mentioned is also a transformation that is taking place at the level, well, really slowly, but getting there, and eventually it will get there, in the level of lawyers and the profession of lawyers, where they are now the ones who write, interpret the law, etc. But in the future, with the implementation of smart contracts, what lawyers will do would be to advise the contracting parties and how to create the smart contracts or how to engage with them. So the lawyer will become a mediator between code and individuals. I don't want to say legislation, right. Then code will become, legislation will become code. So you've just talked about transition in the profession of law. I like that. I'm going back to the oracle question.
Yeah, okay. Great question. So oracle is just a concept, a technological concept. It's not a role. Yes. So I mean, it is a role, but it's not a certain person. When we talking about trusted parties, I understand that it's gonna be someone whom we trust. It can be a company or a person or just a system of some institutions. So now when we talk about the government, we understand this is a complex of some kind of institutions and bodies, right? So this is the same. For example, just to be clear, Oracle, which keeps track on demographic registry. You know, each company, each country has its own registry that keeps track births, deaths, marital status, and some other information about their citizens. So this is the same. I mean, we need someone to keep this registry. And we decided, because this is an electronic democracy, whom we trust to keep that. And for example, in our system, it is very important, because this oracle of this demographic registry will provide information to smart contract, because the smart contract doesn't know when the owner dies. So this oracle will give this information and triggers it's kind of system event to trigger smart will, for example. And so this inheritance, this token will be inherited by successors. So this is just an example. And back into your question about lawyers, this is a good example actually, that we need someone who help people. And I don't believe that we can get rid of lawyers. I mean, we still need someone who is good in understanding all these issues.
Yes.
But the role and the expertise of lawyers have to be dramatically changed. I mean, once one university asked me to give some kind of lecture for their students, lawyer students. I'm a lawyer actually. And first of all, I told them, guys, you are now like 20 years old. Forget about what they tell you about your profession or your future profession. If your teachers, your professor didn't tell you that it's gonna be completely different, so you're misled. The thing is that the real future profession of lawyers is to be good in all this technological stuff. Of course, I don't expect that each and every lawyer will become a programmer, but definitely I mean, just think of it. The high-level idea of Vitaly Buterin, if you follow his development or the development of the Ethereum project, he always says, "I want this language, whatever it's called, Solidity or whatever, used not by programmers. I want this language, programming language, used by lawyers. So lawyers will be able to design smart contracts and to operate people. So it's unnecessary party in this situation, the programmer. The programmer and the lawyer must be one person, and it's gonna be like a person who is in charge of creating smart contracts, which are not actually contracts as we know it. The problem still that many people think that smart contract is a contract. It's not. So when you expect to see something like written on the paper, explaining that one party grants some kind of rights to another party, it's not.
Yeah.
It's just a piece of code that says, using this programming language, what to do. Says not to people, but to the machine.
Yes.
This is very important. And one of the greatest example how people just realized that it is completely different was the story about the DAO and the Ethereum. You know, when there was a hard fork of Ethereum and Ethereum Classic, someone, an attacker, but I don't want to call him an attacker actually. He wasn't an attacker. He was an unexpected beneficiary of this system. Someone says that it was a theft, but it's very, very, I don't want to call it a theft. Just think of it. They designed a smart contract, and the only terms and conditions this organization had, it was just some kind of words like, okay, this is a terms and conditions, and the only legal source of relations of our relations is a smart contract. Any interpretation of this smart contract is just your interpretation or our interpretation. It doesn't matter what we think of this smart code or smart contract. So this smart contract is kind of law for us. And when this attacker or unexpected beneficiary found this, let's say, hole in this contract, he just used unexpected features of this smart contract to take these funds. And when we say it's theft, probably it wasn't a theft. He just used this smart contract and he was a part of this system. He found how to get benefits from that, and that's all. So we need to prepare for this new reality when it doesn't matter what is written on a human readable language. It is only matters how it is designed in the code. That's all.
You've just made me think of Kurt Gödel. You're a lawyer. I don't know if you're familiarized with Gödel's work on incompleteness theorems and completeness. So basically, and this applies to law also, if you have a system that is complete, a mathematical or a logical system that is complete, then it cannot be consistent. And if you have a system that is consistent, then it cannot be complete. So I wonder, with smart contracts, can you have complete, can you really avoid external beneficiaries when you design a system? By definition, it cannot be complete if you want it to be consistent, especially if we are using external frameworks that make it open and adaptive. Like,
yeah.
Can smart contracts be consistent or complete?
I will explain my idea how to address this issue, right? I completely agree about this concept. That is why I'm designed the concept of smart laws. Smart laws is a bit different than smart contract. It is still the concept of smart algorithms, but the role of smart laws is to be the higher level, is the kind of framework in which smart contracts are designed. Why? So the problem is that if we design a smart contract which is not compliant with the law, the problem is that that's about the consistency and the completeness of the system. So we never can predict all possible situations in our relations. So we need something which is about it. And in real world, in real life, when we have a contract, when we conclude the contract, we always know that there is, for example, a civil code that says, okay, you can write this and this and this. If you didn't write this in the contract, this chapter or this clause is applied to this kind of relation. So we always know that this is a kind of help for us, the law, that will address all necessary issues. Even if it's not, we can go to the court, right? Yeah. So the court will address all our issues and will decide who has the right. And in case of smart contract, it's not like that. So we need something that controls, and by default, when we deploy a smart contract, we need to know that it's completely compliant with the law.
Yes.
So I decided to create this layer of smart contracts that we, these are just smart algorithms, but they regulate not private relations, but they regulate public relations, what we call inheritance, law inheritance, and some others. And in this way, they address these issues. What else? The higher level, as I told you, will be the level of electronic democracy. That's what, that is how we control the level of smart laws. So if we don't like this smart contract, we don't like this smart law, we can redesign it by our public collective decision of citizens of the community.
It's like a three-layer thing. And
right.
One very important question. What happens when you have this really amazing world in front of you and in front of me and in front of us and ahead of us, because it'll come, like we know it. But then you have these really outdated institutions like the SEC regulating. What can we do? What's the problem with the SEC, for example?
SEC, sorry?
The Securities US.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is a general problem of governance and the paradigm of governance. I mean, just the thing is that this body was created many years ago. The law was written many years ago. It was more than 95 years, I guess.
Oh my cosmos! What?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that it was designed in the technological paradigm that they had in that time. They didn't have electronic systems. They didn't have decentralized system. So they need to address these issues with securities and exchanges. The problem was, in that time, there was fraud and people didn't trust to corporates and companies that issue securities and trade on markets. So they created this body. And the one of the main task of this body is to keep the registry. This is a centralized registry, and that registry keeps information about who issued what. So when a businessman issue some kind of securities, and there is a record in the registry, and we know this person, his address, who is in charge of, and we know everything about this situation. and that helped to get rid of fraud. So people just cannot take money and go away.
Yeah.
I mean, when there is a record that you obliged and you have to do and you have to follow these rules. The thing is that now when we can use the blockchain, there is no need to keep that registry, because we know who issued what on the blockchain, and nobody can delete this information. If you issue your tokens, I mean, the only thing that we have to identify this person, this is first, and then when we know who issued what, it is completely transparent and nobody can delete that information. So you cannot say, no, I'm not obliged to do this. It is written in the system. It is written in the smart contract. Moreover, it can be performed automatically without your will. So that's actually the answer of that question. We don't need this commission, at least in this design form, and this doing these tasks and keeping this centralized registry. Of course, we need to fight, still we need to fight fraud, we need to still fight some other problems, but this is different story. I mean, when this Security and Exchange Commission now says, okay, you have to register first in our centralized registry what you want to issue your tokens or whatever. Why should I register this fact in this registry if it's completely transferred on the blockchain?
Yeah.
That's the problem. So when someone asked me, wow, how can we live without public registries? In general, not only in Security and Exchange Commission, but how? The answer is simply like that. The blockchain is a registry itself. We don't need any other registries. That's all.
Yeah. Why do you think that cryptocurrencies must and should be legalized?
This is actually the continuance of the question why we need public blockchains and why there are no place for permissioned blockchains, and it's not a good idea to call them blockchains at all. So the cryptocurrency is a kind of blood of the system that incentivizes people to add their computing resources, their machines, to the network to share. And in this way, this network is maintained. So nobody controls this and nobody in charge of keeping this infrastructure alive. So we need the cryptocurrency as a blood of the system. If the government does not recognize the cryptocurrency, and in that moment, the government says, okay, we're gonna introduce the blockchain. Don't you think it's a kind of contradictory thing? I mean, they need to recognize the right of people to use cryptocurrency. In this way, we can have public blockchains. And in this way, we can have and we can develop our decentralized applications on top of that public blockchain. That's all.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You have also written about the transformative power of moneyless economies.
Yeah.
Why? What do you mean?
Actually, I didn't prepare any kind of discussion on this talk. It's just ongoing research. So I will give some only ideas. I'm not sure how it works. I'm probably, I don't know, someone wants to join this research work and to share his ideas with me. But just think of it. A lot of people say, okay, crypto enthusiast says, okay, the cryptocurrency will beat the fiat currency, and the cryptocurrency will be the only way to people to interact and to work with. But The problem is that we still think we evaluate everything we have around us, not in cryptocurrency. Just if I ask you, how much is your phone? You can say, okay, it's $300. But if I ask you, how much is it in crypto? First, you need to think, okay, what is the exchange rate, and then how to, well, but still we evaluate everything in fiat currency. This is the problem. Moreover, people buying cryptocurrency to earn more fiat currency.
Yeah.
This is the problem. So I think this is the wrong way for cryptocurrency in general. So this is like just a secondary technology to the technology of money in general. And while there is money prevails in that form, in fiat form, the cryptocurrency is a kind of secondary.
Yeah.
So I think that we need to develop ideas how to create values of how to actually to create values in crypto. So the best way, I think, is that commodities will be represented by tokens. So this is just the same when we're talking about the tokenization of economy. So if everything is represented, everything we know, I mean, by tokens, in this way we can create a new layer of direct exchange, not through the money, but direct exchange. You can exchange bread on your bicycle, or I don't know, the mouse for your travel tickets or whatever. But for that reason, yeah, we need a new paradigm of values,
Yeah.
I would say, and this is a completely new theory.
Yeah.
So even if you try to find ideas on barter exchange, they are still based on something which is similar to money, which not really what I'm thinking that should worth to research. So I'm actually doing this research how to address these issues and to create this layer of direct exchange of values without money, actually.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
What other things can be tokenized? Let's talk about, for example, the tokenization of energy.
Mm-hmm. Well, energy is still the same. I mean, if you open the law, you will see that electricity is a commodity. So this is the same. We just need to tokenize all these things and to create the pre-market. And well, the problem is that our energetics now is centralized. By decentralizing it, by creating, by using alternative sources of generation of electricity, for example, we can create the community which is completely independent from centralized networks.
Yeah.
But the problem is that when we just imagine our community, which is probably will be a seasteading community, shall we have homesteads or seasteads decentralized, or we still need a company that manage our relations? I mean, the electricity, how we manage all that market. The idea is to tokenize electricity and to create this free market where people can share tokens to buy and sell. In this way, to nobody need to to maintain the system and to create centralized market of electricity.
Yeah.
So my idea is actually to create this concept of decentralized microgrid based on the blockchain, and to evaluate what we have in the result of that, if it's possible to to use for the real world.
I like that. So before we close, why don't we talk about the DApp you're involved in an ICO, in a successful ICO of Propi, for doing real estate transactions and linking together buyers, sellers, investors, registry. Tell us a bit about Propi. Or Propi.
Well, yeah. So the last summer there was a startup, and they created the ICO. They made the ICO, and they asked me to help them, to consult them on issues related to real estate and tokenization of real estate. I thought it's a great idea, so I decided to help the startup, and I took part in this ICO. And I really appreciate them to first to raise this issue of real tokenization of real estate and to create this system of real estate registry. And now they are trying to do it. It's not easy. I mean, the problem of all this story is that the domain of real estate is highly regulated. And if you want to use it for real estate, it's not just possible for one country to, in one night, to decide, okay, we have this system and let's use it. It's gonna be just ridiculous. So first, there is a long story with negotiation with governments to start the first pilot project. And yeah, I hope all the best for this company, and I still am trying to help them to address all these issues. And if they succeed, probably we'll see the first example, the first pilot project somewhere in the world that addressed all these issues and created this online system to manage title rights completely online, peer-to-peer, without the government, without notaries, without brokers, without any other middleman. And actually, I will be happy if anyone succeed in that story, because this is just my dream. And as a researcher, I wish all the best to any other initiative in this field.
I have a solution for overcoming all those regulations that land-based real estate has, which is to seastead instead. Seastead in international waters, starting from scratch.
Yeah, right. The idea is actually, when we think of implementing all these ideas, the idea to reform existing system on the land makes so huge headache.
Yeah.
I cannot just imagine how we transform all the system. I have an idea how to do it, but probably the best way is to start from scratch somewhere where there is no legacy, where there is no long history of regulations and relations, just from scratch, which is called, in Liberland, they call it terra nullis, which from Latin, the null, the land with null history.
Yeah.
And and for seasteading probably is just a great idea, because when you go beyond this line of free economic zone of each country, 200 miles, I guess, these are a free zone for anyone to develop anything they want. So I decided to follow this concept, and actually the thing is that I follow the development of this idea probably since the very beginning of the year 2007, I guess, where Seasteading Institute appeared. And this is a great idea. So we can design this system and to experiment with that, to pilot that, and probably that will be a great case for other countries. And probably it can trigger a lot of changes in the world.
Yes.
So this is my hope, this is my belief that by such people as you and others, we can do something like that together. And I believe that's not a good idea to mimic everything we have. We know to mimic all these bad ideas, just thinking that, oh, we don't have any other alternative. We can just think of it and to decide what we don't like in this current system and what we want to implement in new system.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, Oleksii, thank you very, very much for this really, really insightful almost hour.
Yeah.
I definitely learned a lot, and I hope we have the chance of talking again in the near future.
Yeah, thanks for you. I mean, I really appreciate this talk, and I believe this is just the beginning of new ideas, new projects.
Yes.
And I'm very happy to continue that.
Oh, we will. I'm citing you in my PhD, so we need to talk again in the future.
Thanks for joining us on the Blue Frontiers podcast. To learn more about our work and find out how you can support the project, visit blue-frontiers.com or visit our social channels. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Blue Frontiers, or shoot us a note via our website. If you learned something and enjoyed the show, tell a friend or leave us a positive review on iTunes or wherever you're listening. Don't forget to subscribe to our show and remember to join us for the next episode. See you next time.